If you can start the recording too. Top tab. Hey guys, how you doing? Hold on one second. We're just letting everybody cycle in. Give me just a little moment while we let everybody cycle in and get moving. All right, how's everybody doing? A little early, somebody says. Oh, you were in there early. Hey Joshua. Hey Corey. Hey Brian. Ivan. Hey Anissa, how you doing? All right, we're still cycling in, guys. Just giving everybody a little bit of a moment to get in. I see the numbers keep going up a bit. Yeah. James is having fun fiber meshing. Doing well, Anissa. All right, numbers are still going up. We're just giving everybody a little bit of a moment to get in and get comfortable. Got something a little bit different for you today. We're actually doing environment and 2D stuff. I have Markus here, so I'm going to introduce him here in just a minute. Just getting everybody in and making sure you guys are comfortable. Grab your coffee. Numbers are still coming up, so we're just letting everybody get in and settle in. And then we'll get on with the webinar. Give us a shout out from where you're from too. So Jamie's in Australia, Daniel's in Brazil, UK. Hello, Turkey. Honolulu. Hey, Cameron. Jersey Shore. Dallas. Hey, Marshall. Jose's in Los Angeles. Overton, glad you're enjoying that. Ukraine, Kiev. Russia, Colombia, Napa, Lisbon. How's Portugal? Cool. All right, guys, numbers are still going up just a little bit, so I'm just giving it just a little moment for everybody to get in. You know how these things go. Svetlana's in Germany. Right next to you, Markus.
Yeah, close. Maybe I know her.
maybe, right? Hey, Toronto. Toronto's close to where you're going. Toronto's supposed to be colder than Montreal.
Yeah, I heard the east is better, warmer.
Yeah, Toronto, I know some people from there. That gets bitter cold. Hey, Noah, how are you? All right, so it looks like we're pretty stable now. So thank you guys so much for joining and for taking some time out of your day for this. Got a really cool treat. I'm going to be talking about concepting environments for games with Markus Lenz. So thank you so much, Markus, for joining me for sharing your knowledge here.
My pleasure. I hope I can say something useful.
All right, cool. And now Markus has it right now. We're watching his screen, and it's at UArtsy, so you'll see a fall term there. But if we jump over to the courses or to Markus's class, whichever one works, Markus, you'll see that what we're really talking about today is Markus's concept creation for games environment class. This is like a three-part, three-module / 3-week course that goes over the creation of 3 assets. Was that right, Markus?
Yeah, that's right.
And what kind of assets are these that you end up creating? How do they fit into the whole game production pipeline? We're going to explain this course a little bit to you guys early on, and then we're going to get in and start talking about Markus's work and stuff in more detail. But how does this fit into the whole concept pipeline?
Well, in general, I wanted to make the class as broad as possible, so I didn't want to force anyone to do a very specific object.
Mm.
But I would say in games in total there are a certain kinds of objects, and especially in environments that just keep repeating themselves, and they are mostly driven by gameplay. So you have triggers, doors, and uh, yeah, all those mechanical things that usually are in every game.
Hmm.
So I chose several of those that are just interactable or do something in the environment and move around to create a small object, a medium-sized one, and a really large one. So they are like stereotypical objects you would find in a. I chose like a more of a fantasy RPG themed game. So, but it's up to the student who takes the class to decide what his maybe made up game is and what assets he would like to design for it.
Cool. And so now there's two ways that you can take the class. There's the purchase on demand, or you do the live sessions and the mentoring with Markus. So you've got a way to learn more about this course. The mentorship is the mentorship applications are open. They're either open depending on when you're watching this, or they're about to be open. So you can click that, or let me email you with more information once we have that completely finalized. All right. So let's talk about you, Markus. What do you do now?
Well, I'm working as a concept artist. I'm freelance now after working as an in-house concepter for roughly 5 years on several projects and in different teams here in Germany. And well, in the beginning, I was very production focused and did a lot of assets for the 3D pipeline and mostly had lots of 3D guys behind me that were waiting for assets to create. And yeah, there was lots of communication with those guys, and I kind of focused on the design aspects of the game concept art creation rather than the illustration work.
Yeah.
And so most of the things they don't necessarily need a lot of storytelling, for example, and other things are more important and not that much polish. But there are certain ways to show all your ideas and what you want to say with your concept without too many details and too much rendering.
Well, why don't we jump into your work?
Um, should I just open my portfolio or do you?
No, that presentation you had. The
Okay, all right. Okay, I'm starting with these three characters. When I thought about important design aspects, especially for environments and what to do there, I think it's important to kind of see design as a more general thing. You can design characters as well as environments, and it applies to both animate and unanimated objects. So, for example, with these three guys, they just follow basic principles to kind of represent their role in a game. So the first one is the healer, the tank is in the middle, and the DPS, the damage dealer, is on the right. So I try to focus on simple shapes to also balance that out and have the design show through in a pretty simple way. So the tank would be very heavy, and it's not easy to hunt him around or push him over. It's very solid, so they have a more round shape. The healer is like he's not very he's easy to damage, and all his he's made out of cloth, for example, so he's not as armored as the tank. And the DPS is also very top heavy, and looks more like an arrow shape, which is more aggressive and also shares some attributes with that.
Hmm. So shape is really important, simple shapes.
Yeah,
And
especially the right shapes, I would say. If you think about concepting, like this is a set of characters that kind of belong together. So I made up, yeah, I want to have these three characters. So also when you're concepting one character, you can also think about the second one you want to do in a set like this.
then
And
how does this fit in with the environment too when you start doing that? Do you have similar kind of shape structures as well?
yeah, I would think so. I mean, think about this if you are thinking about an environment that is, environments can also be uh, machines, or if you think about the environment of these three guys, for example, the middle one would be the heavy guy, but maybe his civilization is on the heavy side. I'm thinking dwarves, for example. You could
Hmm.
say the middle one would be the dwarven culture, and you would think about a structure that is heavy and made of stone and uh, very sophisticated in that it will not collapse under the weight of a mountain. It's just like some attributes you can also think about in a tank, and DPS would be more of an elven. I'm thinking arrows and this more spiky shapes. Yeah, as much as the healer would be a more magical culture where you have to design his magical environment and use crystal shapes, and you can adjust that to whatever you are trying to convey as your idea for your environment.
So character or environment, the shape, basic fundamental 2D shape is still very relevant to function and as it elucidates archetypes, things like that. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, I've actually been thinking about design in a comparison to traditional picture composition and composition making. So
Hmm.
composition itself in environment design and painting, and especially with landscapes, it's nothing more than just trying to put abstract shapes on a canvas and make them look interesting.
Yeah.
So it doesn't really, it's not very, it doesn't concern about the actual content of the image, but the whole shape language is supposed to create points of interest and move the eye around. So I would say this is like a universal rule that can be applied to any design. It doesn't matter if it's a character or an environment.
Cool. All right.
So, for example, I have the next one is also an environment that is highly influenced by the sun. So the whole topic of this one was the sun. So if you look at the basic shape of the sun, it's round. And there are tons of examples in this one. If you look at the architecture and how the shapes are made up and the patterns, everything is roundish or with spikes depicting the sun rays. And there are so many ways to actually have a cohesive look in your design, even in bigger pictures, while staying true to your original, very simple shape.
Hmm. Absolutely. Yeah, the circle's repeated in the ornamentation, in the building structure, canopy, stairs. So yeah.
And it can even go as far as the materials. Like also, if you, for example, here you have the sun that is really hot, so it also just fits with the whole lava and fire. Also, gold in itself is a very warm color. It reflects a lot. So there are so many different things you can think about before designing something that will make it very easy for you to later design something for that culture
So
without getting lost.
so what are the stages? Like how do you prepare for this? Do you sketch out ornamentation separately, go through a series of designs? Like how does it all kind of come together?
Well, it depends a lot on the task at hand, I would say. So if you have the time to really design a whole culture, it really makes sense to just sketch random shapes with whatever design language you are thinking about. Because usually the things get more and more complex, and in the beginning, the ideas are not as good as they are in the end when you feel really comfortable with the art style. So it needs a bit of time to get the really good results. So thumbnailing is always a good idea. And I think I actually don't think there is any way to say, okay, now I've done it all. Like, especially with the round circle shape, I did that so much, especially for that project, where in the end, after the 10th door, concerning based on a circle, I thought, okay, now I have every door imaginable designed with this simple shape, and then, no, I didn't do that. It's great. Why haven't I thought about this one in the beginning?
Yeah, that's great. What do you got for us next?
Okay, so these three guys are just more in terms of video game development, three characters and how you can apply some variation to them with shapes and to upgrade them as much as you want. I think it's also a very typical task to do in video games, to have these kinds of armor upgrades for our games, and especially in mobile games where you have your one character and you need to upgrade him with very expensive premium cash. So I made like several points here to upgrade him in a very easy ways. Like the first one is the weakest one, so you want to look at all the three parts in general to upgrade him
Mm-hmm.
and have as much significant upgrades as possible. Like one easy way is the first one has one horn, the second one has two horns, and the third one has three horns. So I could break that rule easily and give like the third one also just two, but I think what's the point if there's such an easy thing to have such a high impact on the silhouette and everything to not do it. So
And are you doing these levels at the same time that you're doing the main concepting, or do you find like one concept first and then you go up?
I usually do one concept and go up. I heard it a lot in the past in the production that people say, yeah, do the biggest and baddest one first and then just reduce it to just take stuff away and it will be fine. But I think it's the wrong way actually. So I would always go for the weakest one and make him look cool. And I feel like it's way easier to make him more badass. I think you can always add stuff, and I think players will especially like it if you start with something good and not feel like you have taken something away from it, and then you're just making him awesome, and you have to stick with the guy that sucks.
Nice.
That's
A
way
totally
too often,
different
especially
mindset.
also with
Okay.
weapons.
Yeah.
I'm not sure why so many games, especially role-playing games, lets you start with basically a stick in your hand that looks ugly. You can always have like an awesome sword from the beginning and just get more awesome stuff.
Yeah. Does that
So you
work
have just
in environments too? Because you said earlier you created three pieces. The course is built around three pieces, and they're small, medium, and large, basically, right?
yeah
And if I remember right, they shared similar concept, certain design elements.
yeah they share actually all design elements. So I
And
would say in environment it goes the same way. Like especially with this, I pointed out here, for example, the armor distribution and the material. And the first guy, if you look at how much gold, for example, he has in comparison to the third one, it's just it's just a different way to show significance and points of interest, and that is also very very important in designing environments and especially assets.
mm-hmm.
So in my small, medium, and large piece that I will show at the end of the slides, I also have a distribution of the metal parts, for example, that show mechanical elements. And in if you think about some environment objects that you can interact with that have mechanics and levers and pulls and things like that, it highly depends on where you place them on your asset for the player to know you can actually do something with the object. So you can put in lots of wrong information for the player to go there, but he's not supposed to press anything at that object.
Mm-hmm.
But the design says, look at me, I'm important. But actually there's nothing to do. So the player goes there and is wondering, is this broken, or what should I do here? Why does it look so interesting? So if you don't have a strong focus in your environment assets, it can be confusing for the player.
Yeah. Do you mind jumping to the back just so we can piece that together, or do you want to just hit to the next one?
No, I can jump. So these are the three objects I did. The first one is I started with a line art because in general I'm not a big fan of adding photos to those when they have so much mechanical things going on. It's just it's sure nice to have all the texture, but I prefer to design with line art, so I stayed with that. So that's the small object. I was thinking about just doing a trigger and how the trigger is working.
Mm-hmm.
So in terms of designs for all the three objects, I was thinking about a very rectangular design in general with pretty standard rocks that are big blocks, and they don't have a very complex shape. But as an interesting contrast, I was thinking about adding the metal elements that have a different shape, and that also just creates some tension between them, that they don't look too similar, and also adding much warmer material on those. So this one, for example, would be something for the player to walk on, or to put it with to use it with his feet, and then it would go into the ground and show all the mechanics it would involve for the animator to animate. Was also, for example, a back and forth of how it will work. So I started with a rough sketch, but I didn't know how it would really animate, so I let it in a rough state and then just drew the animation stages. And at the points where I saw it wouldn't work, or the shapes and the ornaments would not fit together in the last stage, for example,
Mm-hmm.
then you can always go back to the first stage and make adjustments. So it's very helpful to not make one object that is completely finished and then think about the animation, because things will not work out as you imagined them in the first place if you are animating it, and then it will look completely different. I think you cannot see my mouse, right?
I can see your mouse, yeah.
Can everybody see my mouse?
Mm-hmm. If I can, yeah.
Yeah, it's just, for example, these parts here that move around here, that you have the shapes work as they are in this version, but also that we have like these overlapping shapes, that this makes sense in a way. So if everything moves, it also has to look good in this state, because usually if you think about a trigger like that and you use it instantly when you get there, for example, it will probably stay longer in this shape. So the player will see this one much longer than actually this one. So I feel like it's even more important to make this guy here work and look cool than the main one, because this will kind of vanish anyway.
Fair enough. Now you had a weapon, which I think might be a great point for us to start to talk about. Oops, excuse me. Start to talk about the forms and the way things look.
Yeah, I had these weapon upgrades again. and also just showcasing different things to do while upgrading these and how far you can actually push these in terms of um, technicality and also almost theory. So you see those four, and I've just I'm just showcasing, for example, here is how different you can change the silhouette and the shape to also upgrade that to make it more aggressive and more epic and sharper, more dangerous. Then with these, I'm just showcasing like implied lines that go over the design to give the eye some movement and add some rhythm to look at it. And this also gets more and more complex in the last one because it's getting bigger, and complexity also can create a lot of interest. And here you have a certain rhythm that goes with it and follows a direction, so it gets the angle gets tighter and tighter to the front to let the eye move along and kind of speed through it.
How much is that on your mind? How much are those rhythms on your mind in the beginning? Because that seems quite involved.
Yeah, and I know it is. It was actually something totally unconscious, I have to say. And
Uh-huh.
when I started thinking about it, when you do something unconscious, it's more about aesthetics and things like that, and you don't actually know that you do it, but people keep telling you the design looks awesome and this looks great, and how did you do that? And you can't really describe it, and you can't put rules under it.
Mm-hmm.
So I actually just backtracked when I was thinking about rules, I backtracked some of those of the things I did to see if it just fits with the rules I made up, and the rules that I also will explain in the class extensively. And I found almost all of the composition rules I would always follow, and I learned with these. So
That's awesome.
it's it's good to think about it in the beginning or know that they exist.
Yeah.
So know the rules exist, and then you can consciously like break them or use them to your advantage to create interest where you want it to be.
So maybe not a strategy that you use in the beginning because it might paralyze you, but once
True.
you've started to create some, then you can go through and see like it's a tool you can use to look at the work. Because now that you said that, I can totally see the progression. Before you said it, I didn't necessarily see the progression. I could feel it, but now I can see, like the three arrows on the second from the right one, the simpler one, and then you go into that third from the right, and then there's like 5 arrows. So if you go into like I think it's this next drawing actually. No, next one. Yeah, and then one more. Yeah. So yes, if we look at those middle pieces, it's totally apparent now. Even though one has a gem and then the other one has a screw, two screws.
Yeah. Now
So,
you don't. It doesn't have to be lines all the way. It
uh-huh.
can also be just different shapes and recreate them. And I think those rules are not really something you can think of while designing it.
Yeah.
But if you're at some point designing something like that and you already did it, then
Yeah.
you can basically go through that list and back check. Something looks odd. It doesn't look cool enough. And then some of those rules might be able to help you just. Do I have any rhythm at all? Why doesn't it look tight enough? So it helps you control your own work if you are alone, because if you create it as best as you can and you don't seem to be able to approve it and you don't have anybody who you can ask for feedback, you
Hmm.
still need some tools to check yourself if you have done everything that is possible to have the best design possible.
That totally makes sense. Cool. All right, so what's next? We got the weapons, and then there was something in between, I think. Yeah, here we go. I love
Yeah,
this
this one
this
is just,
mermaid
yeah, the
piece.
mermaid's kissing.
Yeah,
It's just an example about video game restrictions, even if it doesn't look like it. But oftentimes when you create assets like that that are huge, and especially if they have characters involved, it takes a lot of time to create these and a lot of performance, a lot of texture work and everything. So usually 3D artists like to uh, mirror things. So so it means you every awesome asset you create doesn't isn't allowed to have asymmetry, for example. But everybody knows asymmetry is pretty interesting. So this is just an example to make symmetry interesting. That was the main idea of the whole thing was it will be symmetrical. So let's have the two mermaids. You only have to model one. They have the same pose basically. Then you can mirror them and they kiss each other. So I kind of try to use that to my advantage,
that's great. Now
and it saves a lot of
you draw these from
texture.
scratch, right? You're not using, are you using reference? Like, how do you start to lay these things out in such great perspective?
Uh, well, that's more of a perspective class question, I think.
Hmm.
Um, there were times where I used some 3D bases as a reference. I
Yeah,
don't think I used one for that one, but usually for something like that, I create uh, some guidelines that just help me, but more about the ellipses in the middle. Like for example, would do one layer with all these ellipses on it, and then I would transform it and just draw everything around it so that those all make sense here. But otherwise, um, don't do something too ridiculous, especially in concept art like that, because you should stay close to the game camera. I wouldn't do any crazy angles with that.
hmm,
It's more about conveying all the information and not to create uh, a crazy image that is very much of an illustration.
right.
So this one is I used a pretty simple perspective for me, and I'm pretty confident in my skills to trick people into thinking that the perspective is right.
Got it. Got it. So the key lesson here is the asymmetry and the simple construction. So at what stage of a concept is this? Like what is there a spectrum? Sometimes you need more detail, sometimes you need less detail.
That also goes back to what I already said that I, for example, don't like to use a lot of photo bashing.
Hmm.
That, for example, I started with the line art,
Yeah.
and that is like my first step. And if the line art is finished and I have another day to color it and to render it and to have an additional day to light it, I would do it. But I would prefer after day one of doing the line art and creating the design itself, that some producer would run into the room and say, "You can't work on that anymore. You need to finish it." And I know I have all the information I need already in the design and the layout.
Yeah.
So it's already finished. I could give this to a 3D guy and tell him roughly the materials or bash some photos together for him to, yeah, here, go, whatever, and he can already start working. But if I would just bash random photos together and make a big mess and try to piece it together until day three for anybody to make sense out of it besides myself, that would be a whole different story. And if I have like a big mess of texture and colors and different resolutions and a lot of information where it doesn't belong, and then I have to go give it to a 3D guy and tell him, yeah, you know what I thought about it, I hope, and he has to work with that. I wouldn't be so confident with that.
Yeah. So the line work is key for you. That's one of the important strategies for you right off the bat then, right? And you said a day, 2 days? How long?
For what?
For line work.
For this one, for example,
Yeah, sure. This one.
that should be actually pretty easy. So the lines itself, if you do it a lot, it goes pretty easy. But you need a lot of practice, I would say, and
Hmm.
just drawing skills. So that would definitely not be a day. That would be half a day.
All right. What slide do you have next? Let's take a look because I think we might jump right into go back to the actual material. But wait, now here you've got a lot more detail.
Yeah, but not that much actually. It's just, oh, it's just it seems a bit more complex because it's not as symmetrical, but all the strings and things like that, they don't take more time to draw. It's just an example of also repeating shapes again, and to make your life easier and the life for the 3D artists, because they will usually also create like one texture for this one and repeat it here and use the texture of this one here. And here you can also add storytelling to your concept pieces, like that they ripped off the statue, and it's also still kind of symmetrical because the 3D artist can just create the statue on the right first,
Mm-hmm.
then basically rip it apart and still reuse most of it. So it's not only informative to use these tools to create environment designs.
So is a part of the job also making sure that as you design, you're designing it, it seems almost from like a kit perspective. Like you're designing the kit, the repetitive patterns, the simple shapes, the overall simple shape that then can maybe be broken up. Like you've got one arch, but then the arch is just going to get broken up a little bit.
Yeah, yeah, I feel like it. I mean, usually when you are a concept artist for a job like that,
Hmm.
you are like the first guy to create something. And if you do your job right, the 3D artist can just sit back and concentrate on the modeling and the textures and not have to think about, ooh, which texture should I do here? So if I have this door and the next thing they would have to design would be a wall, they would just reuse these textures again
Right.
because they are already here. So you are designing for something on the long run, and that's why you usually have less concept artists than 3D artists, because you will probably do the same thing again, and you try to stay cohesive in your design of the area, and you know that stuff because you've created it. So
Yeah,
if
yeah.
you give that to a 3D guy, he already doesn't have lots of exclamation marks on his head.
Cool. All right, we're going to open this up for questions, guys, in just a really short time. So gather up your questions. Make sure you've got some questions that you want to ask. Do we have a slide after this, Marcus? All right, now we
But I
get
can
back
still
into the work. So there was
show the
something.
video.
Yeah, let's show these guys. This would be great. Now you start again the same way. The thumbnails. Are we seeing thumbnails in the back? Is that what we're seeing?
Yeah, I show it in this one because that object doesn't really have any gameplay to show.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just showing all my exploration for the shapes in the background that I did for this one. So I did all these just to basically get this guy here, and
Mm-hmm.
I went from that, and all the information I basically gathered, all the cool things I thought, oh, that's interesting. This part I kind of tried to put in here. So I have like my own library of reference that I created myself.
Do you ever, when you're working on one project, you end up using an idea from before that you were messing around with?
Um,
Like, do you keep these concepts in your mind later on? Because this is like a library, right? You've got a like you've created what, a library of 10 different pieces.
yeah, definitely.
So this is now your kit, so to speak.
Yeah, true.
Now this design is very similar to the design of the last one, right? Can we see that the small one? Right. Okay. So again, like you were saying, you're repeating the same kind of motifs where you've got that L shape, that inverted L shape, right?
Yeah, I try to also stay close to the materials, but as you see here, I was trying to stay away with the metal parts from the player area actually. So if you think about a man walking there, he would mostly get where the stone parts is, so he doesn't think he can actually put his foot somewhere like here. So here, look, it looks like there's a lot going on. You have a lot of contrast with the uh, technical stuff, and I try to stay away as much as possible with the bigger ones, so you have no pedals and nothing on here.
Hmm. Is that something you know in the beginning? Or maybe they changed that stuff up as they changed the gameplay?
Yeah, they can always do that, but I feel like you see with all these stones, I have them layered here,
Hmm.
and in the back there is also stone with some metal that goes behind it, so it can suggest a lot of animation or movement, or that it can actually do something, but you can't really tell now what it actually does.
So this is
So it is,
more, it's more than just concepting. I mean, you're thinking about gameplay as you do this, and you're kind of designing some aspect of gameplay.
yeah, true. I think if you are working in games, you should be involved with that, and it's fun to think in a game way if you are a game artist. So even if I do personal projects, I feel like this was is a personal piece. I like to set myself like guidelines how things work, especially in a game, because I think it's fun. And if you oftentimes you sit down and think I want to do something personal, but I have no idea what to do, something cool, something epic, and I usually think about a fun game and draw like the character archetypes or
Hmm.
armor upgrades. And it's just more. This could all be just some big statue and not do anything. But I can suggest something more important or some purpose of this. And somebody built that, and it should have done something in the past. And that was the whole topic of what I was going for. It was some ancient civilization that built this and kind of forgot it in the jungle. So that's why everything is mossy and has a lot of rust.
Hmm.
So this is the backstory to make it more fun and enjoyable to actually create these assets.
Cool. What do we have next?
Yeah, this is the bigger object in the same vein of the first one. So
And I was looking through the lectures. You do the line work, then you do some coloring, or actually, I think you do shade, like you design the shadows next,
yeah,
and then go from there.
yeah, this has a pretty big line art, but it was done actually pretty quickly
Hmm.
because it has so many objects that repeat themselves. And I feel, especially when you draw something like that, and you as a concept artist feel like, hey, I can repeat so much of it. It goes so easy. Then I can also think about the 3D guy who will do it after me, that he will also think like that. And I think as a 3D artist, you can build like this one module here, repeat it 3 times, and you're finished. So it's not like you have to build the whole thing. You have to build it once and then mirror it 2 additional times, and the giant asset is finished.
Yeah.
And I started creating these smaller ornaments that are also with the same design as I already established in the smaller in the small objects.
Hmm.
So I also chose to do this one the last until I was really confident in the design language I established in the small ones. and I was able to experiment as much as possible. So these are much more elaborate than the first ones. And yeah, I just try to keep them here simple for the 3D artist also to have them as a reference, and then I use the line art from here to transform it onto my actual line art.
Mm-hmm.
So this piece here was just transformed here, here, and here, and I also have to draw it only once.
By transform, you mean Photoshop free transform, or?
Yeah, true.
Awesome. Okay, that works.
Yeah,
All right,
it's perfect.
let's get some questions, guys. So we've got some already, Markus. Tom is asking, your healer character reminds him of a cyberpunk priest. Do you find that your artwork crosses over from project to project? And if so, how do you clear your mind so it doesn't? So how do you get like a fresh perspective, or is Markus in every piece that he's working on?
I think that's difficult to answer myself, but I think a lot of it moves over. So especially on bigger projects, you kind of need like an art director or other artist that can tell you, hey, you've done it again. Why does your character always point in that direction, or things like that? It's a thing you have to keep in mind, I guess. But in general, I would say it's pretty natural that your work influences your own work as well. So
that makes sense, having a second pair of eyes. I'm going to start asking a few questions too. So what medium do you work in primarily? Is it Photoshop?
yeah, primarily Photoshop.
Okay, and then reference isn't really, you go to reference, and you even talk about reference in the course. What about 3D models and things like that? Do you ever start with those?
It oftentimes depends on the piece itself.
Mm-hmm.
I don't use it very often, but I've actually started, for example, I like to use at the moment, especially for statues and things like that are very character driven, I like to use DAZ 3D
Mm-hmm.
because it's just so fast. It's not about showing like lots of individual character, but you can just pose a character quickly and make a statue out of it, or things like that.
Yeah.
Or if you have like a fountain with 10 people standing there, it would be troublesome for me to draw 10 figures,
Yeah.
especially because anatomy is not my strongest part, I would say.
Yeah, and it's a beast. Mark is asking, what games do you like? What do you find visually appealing?
I like mostly, I think, role-playing games, and I really love MMOs. I usually don't have any time to play MMOs, but I just love how creative they are and how vast the world is. So I'm actually playing Terra at the moment, which was on my list for quite a long time to check out. So that's just a nice world for me to explore in terms of character design, armor design, and all the cities. Or I've played The Witcher, and Dragon Age Inquisition was beautiful. Yeah, I usually play games that I would like to work for at some point.
Manuel's asking about the game industry in Germany. Do you find interesting employers or dependent on international freelance work? And we were talking about that because you're moving somewhere else, right?
Yeah, was that the question regarding the German industry or in general?
Yeah, German industry. So Manuel is asking about the German industry. Game industry in Germany.
Yeah, it's tricky in Germany to start off. I think there are a lot of good companies, especially nowadays we have huge mobile companies and huge browser game companies that have tons of people, and they actually also pay decently. So I usually think there's lots of exploitation in that field, in in that area. So lots of internships you have to do to get in and meet people to get a chance. And yeah, I think it's a pretty rough road to start off if you are not like exceptionally talented. But if you are exceptionally talented, you will probably go to the States right away.
Got it. And Michael was asking, given your work is so sculptural, do you think it's would be as efficient to do this in something like ZBrush, or is the mind-hand feedback loop tighter when drawing? And I think it's probably important to remember, Michael, that Markus said that like one of those line work for one of those was half a day, and I don't think you could do that in ZBrush in half a day. So my assumption is
Yeah.
it's faster. But do you work at all with ZBrush?
No, sadly not. I just did some sculpting with other programs, but wasn't really convinced for concept purposes. But I
Yeah.
always wanted to try ZBrush actually. I have a lot of friends that use it.
Great. And so from the work you're doing too, I think the really cool thing is I mean, it's drawing. It's just drawing. You don't need to learn this massive program. I mean, ZBrush started out small. Now it's a behemoth. And any 3D software is slower. So this is really just a drawing job.
Yeah, true. I mean, it's just drafting and the craft of drawing. Just
That's great. Armando's asking, will you be going over color palettes, color theory, things of that nature?
roughly in terms of materials.
Hmm.
So with this one, for example, I was going for the highest contrast possible in terms of shapes, material, but also color, of course. So that's why I chose a more darker value for the metal to have some value information and the whole cool and warm contrast. But it's not a lot of color theory. I try to keep it pretty simple in that regard with my own work.
The focus being on the line work, if I remember seeing the tutorials right. The line work and the creation of the sculptural space. Am I wrong?
Yeah, true. Yeah,
Okay.
especially I struggled with line art most of my career, I would say. In the beginning I was always thinking about it as a very time-consuming thing to do a clean line art, and I was redrawing my lines over and over again to have the most beautiful lines I could do, and I wanted them as clean as any vector, graphic, whatever. And as soon as I gave up on that, I felt like it was so easy to do line art and no pain whatsoever. So I will also talk about some line art techniques in the tutorial and how you can improve your line art and to create some focus.
Cool. All right, great. Okay, any other questions, guys? Shout them out. Otherwise, I think we're pretty much right there at our limit. So again, do you mind jumping over to the course, Markus?
Sure.
To the browser. So if you scroll down, Markus, guys, you can see the curriculum down below, so projects, and then if you expand the lectures, you can get a sense of what's actually in there. So you can see in the very first week, he's talking design language, reference, scenarios, and how to create scenario A, scenario B, variations, and then he's talking about sketching, but then optimizing the sketch, which in traditional speak, the Disney animators would, like, they'll draw on tracing paper, put tracing paper over the top of that, refine the drawing, tracing paper over the top of that, refine the drawing. So same kind of thing. Sketching comes first, functionality second. Then we see you go through restrictions and details and refining. And then if we jump into project 3, you can literally get a sense of everything that's happening in here. It's a full 2D class. You just need Photoshop. And it's really focused on designing these things from your mind. Basically, you're going to be following along with Markus, or creating your own using the same kind of strategies. So it's a really cool class. I'm real excited to be able to have that. And thank you, Markus, for putting this together.
It was fun to do.
Yeah, and actually, I just want to say, so in Project 3 too, you see we're like, this is where you get into the details and highlights. Color is in here, shadow. I remember seeing you lay out shadow for all of these things. It's a real simple way that you were doing it, and it makes it read so solid.
Yeah, thanks. I'm also just showing how to add some more details in there quickly with some layer styles and things like that.
Cool. All right, guys. Well, I will be sending you more information, or make sure you go to UArts and you go to the course to sign up, and we'll go from there. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Markus. Thanks, Josh.
No problem. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Daniel, Andre, Mario, Matthias. See you, Mr. Montoya. Alrighty, guys. We'll get all of this recording and whatnot up to you as soon as we can. Have a fantastic rest of your week and a great weekend. See you, Nate. See you, Tom. See you, Mario. Anissa, take care. And Manuel. Alrighty. Thank you, Markus. I'll talk to you a little later.
All right, see you.
See ya.